is being very adaptive, right? You have to be adaptive to what the business needs you to do as well. So not only do you need to understand, you might have to change the way you do things, right? You might have to change the way you operate, right? You won't necessarily be anchored around your specific area of expertise, but what you have to do is be able to navigate to the point where you understand the business, then you start to bring in your technical expertise, and then you start to build what we call roadmaps, pathways to success. Now, that sounds very easy, doesn't it? Right? It sounds very straightforward. So
Yeah.
now the next thing is, I found, is you have to have resilience, right? You've got to be able to have very thick skin. I don't know if that translates very well, but you've got to be able to not take things personally. You've got to think about what people are saying to you. You have to translate it into something that is tangible for them, right? Now, when I moved into more of a consulting role, that became very, very prevalent within 6 months, right? I had to really focus on the business and let the technology go a little bit, and then rely on other people. So the other key around being a strategic resource is to feel that it's to build a team, right? And to operate within the team and rely on other people, right? You have to build a team and rely on other people. You have to build that sort of that rapport with them, but also understand the people around you. Everyone has different skill sets, right? So another key element I would say that's really important in a strategic role as a digital advisor. By the way, a digital advisor, if I looked at the description of it from previous roles, it really falls within that of an enterprise architect, and where it focuses is on business architecture, right? So business architecture is now becoming I believe Microsoft were actually ahead of the game in this space, because they were really focusing on, they had the people coming in who were technically savvy, but they wanted them to be adaptable, but also go into the business, understand what they're doing, and map technologies to meet the needs of the business. Patience is something else that's required in a strategic role, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of different people, a lot of different personalities, and also people's own agendas. So it's a tricky role, right?
Yeah.
And I find that if you're able to sort of navigate that better, right? If you're able to listen to people, understand what they need to do, but also respectively, challenge them with respect, right? Introduce ideas that they might not necessarily see. So that's where the gold is for an advisor role. Is the first. So for example, I'll give you an example. Going into I had a recent, I say recent, 3 years ago when I was at EY, just before I joined EY, I was contracted to. Am I permitted to say who the companies are?
You can, but just
Yeah.
just say company X. That's it. Yeah.
Okay, so it was let's put it this way, it's one of the 3 public insurance companies in Canada. So it was a Crown Corp, and they had this cloud strategy, and they wanted to go straight from being on premise to multi-cloud, and
Wow.
which is crazy, right? You and I guess the people on the call, I don't know who's in the cloud space, but go ahead, Ahmed.
Yeah, again, that's a good point. So let's maybe engage folks on the call with us here. And again, I want to know what guys about the digital advisor role, the enterprise architecture role, and what questions you may have for Mark today. Because again, Mark is very passionate about what he's doing. He can speak for the next 2 hours without stopping. And as you can see, he's done a ton of great complex programs, with big organizations, and with millions of dollars. He helped upsell, create pre-sales documentation, and also create a very complex, unique and new transformational programs to help organizations move forward. So again, we don't want to keep this one way. We want to have it two way. So I'll keep pausing, here and there just to see if you guys have questions to Mark. And what do you know about the digital advisor? If you don't know, that's okay. Just say yes, I know, or no, I don't know. If you want us to, clarify more, what is a digital advisor role looks like, where does it stand in the organization, maybe, and how does it help, the organization move its whole IT, strategy to a certain extent to a place where they want to envision in the future. Okay, so we have silence. Some folks are still shy.
It's okay.
so
It's all
so
right.
maybe you can, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
yeah. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Okay. Again, this is supposed to be conversational, right? So,
Yes.
I'm based on my experience. I'm trying to give you examples of when, you go into an organization. Not only have you got to understand the business, you've got to understand the culture, right? Which is I would say, one of the key aspects that impacts or affects the ability to execute on the plan that you put in place, right? Now, again, I joined Microsoft because I felt that the culture and the message from the top was compelling, right? To empower every person, every individual, and every organization to achieve more, very clear and succinct, and it stayed there. So one of the other areas that I'd worked on with organizations is to help them sort of articulate that, right? And not myopically, again, focus on the latest tech to do this. And like I said, this organization I work with, they were saying, okay, we're going to go cloud, we're going to go multi-cloud, without really understanding the cost, right? So there's another area that, as an advisor, it's not just the technology; it's the impact of the technology from an organizational perspective. How it impacts the workforce, and that's everybody, up and down. Where are they today? Are they able to actually, have they got the skills? Have they got the capabilities to actually engage and execute on a transformation? Did they understand truly what I say truly, I said, did they understand the true cost of moving from A to B, right? The switching costs of taking on cloud? Because one of my, I would say one of my key skills is to be a step back, right? Reflect, understand what the organization's asking you, but also be really honest and open with them, right? That predominantly, and I've said this a lot, many times to people, that cloud's going to cost you more initially, right? Why is that? Well, because you're duplicating your infrastructure, right? You're duplicating the tools, you're duplicating operational procedures. So you've got to really go into this with your eyes wide open and start to prioritize what you need to do. So it's kind of, the advisor role is an educational role to organizations. They don't necessarily always take your word, right? So again, patience is required, because at times you possibly have to reframe that message multiple times, right? And the CIO's probably got a different remit to the CFO, right? The CIO wants to bring in newer technology that's going to advance IT in terms of its business validity, and one of them's AI, right? How do we bring AI, which is the big shiny object at the moment, how do we bring this into the environment with minimal risk? I heard somebody.
Oh, I think this is just background.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, I like to think
So,
that
so
I'm
Mark,
a
maybe let me
pragmatist.
ask you, yeah, let me ask you a few questions, and again, maybe this would help folks understand, your role more, and then we get
Hmm.
into some other, insights. So your role is, again, you work with CEOs, with CIOs, with VPs, with very
Yeah.
strategic people, and you plan for the future. That's what you normally do. You put for them like a roadmap. They have some, let's say, business targets they want to achieve, by 2030, for example. And they want to do those things through technology, through cloud, through a transformation. So they come and bring you to tell them what should they prioritize first, what they should do next, and you start to build that plan again based on their current status, and then
Hmm.
what they are envisioning through a lot of interviews and a lots of
Yeah,
questions and back and forth. You can just propose few things and then come back. So this is a very complex role, to be honest, and you need to
it
have a
is.
lot of skills, business skills specifically, and a lot of technical skills as well. So can you tell us how did what excited you to be in that role? Why did you select that role? What was motivating for you in that role?
Well, it's an evolution. That's the way I looked at it, Ahmed. As I said, I kind of did a really cut down, but a version of where I came from. But I was very much a technologist, right? I was just a super techie. But then I got to a point where I'm going, well, I need more to this. I need to understand, how is that choice of this, for example, this widget, how is it going to help? How is it going to cloud and help this business? Because you have to really translate it. So that's what attracted me to moving into an enterprise architecture role, right?
Mhm.
Where because you're not there are four specific domains within EA, right? So I've done the technical architecture to the Wahoo, right? I've been working with application teams. I've also been working with the data team. So, but business architecture in particular, I think is the strongest part in terms of helping organizations understand the value of why they've got technology, right? Because you start to articulate and map. You help them understand what their business capabilities are. Some organizations already have them. So I think for me, what attracted me was that holistic piece where I could actually see end to end where where a business could take advantage of a technology and where it would say, okay, let's hold on this one, let's make sense of it. So the conversations would go up and down the scale, from the C level, the planning, to operations. And I think that's another important aspect. I came out of an operations, so I've done soup to nuts, as it would say. All the way from down at the coal face all the way up to actually helping an organization make decisions on what's the right technology choices and which ones aren't the right technology choices, and when do I go cloud, when do I not, what do I choose to go there, when do I choose, and what kind of workloads do I move from A to B. um, during my tenure at TransCanada Pipelines, now TC Energy, I jumped at an opportunity there. I'll give you an example. There's an ERP program, right? And I jumped at it because they gave me the my remit was I went into the business. I was the only IT guy in this business unit, and they gave me full remit to choose technology, but I didn't choose the technology. I went out to vendors and started articulating to them what we need to do. And this points to another area which I think is really important, is that being able to collaborate not just internally with an organization. C-suite is important, absolutely. They're ones that are holding the purse strings, but also operations. I've made mistakes in my tenure, right, with operations. I can tell you about that in the future, but I think it's really, those are the things that really excited me, to see that whole end to end. So, this ERP program, I learned quickly that technology, I selected the best technologies. We got the best technology at the time that were available to run SAP on premise cloud. And I used, there was a combination of external vendors, Accenture, Microsoft, VMware, SAP. And you have to build a team. So again, that really excited me. That the fact that you you're collaborating across domains and across businesses and with a single goal. Now, I think that the other thing was important was to have a VP or someone that was very well aligned to what needs to be done, and a great sponsor, right? Charismatic, and that's really important. But that's another point. But those are the things that excited me, because I could actually see truly the impact of technology in a positive light.
Yeah. So let me ask you, maybe Mark, because your role is like a journalist a little bit. You have to deal with so many people, and you are not definitely aware about each and every technology and each and every detail. So this is scary for some people. Like when someone hear that I have to deal with VMware, SAP, and other vendors, and I don't have the whole understanding width and breadth of those technologies, how do you deal with that situation? Again, this is something that most of techie folks sometimes feel scared about it. So you may want to share a little bit about this. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I felt very much that I had that same anxiety, right? Around, do I need to know everything? Well, you can't possibly know everything, right? So what I did, I anchored myself to specifically what we needed to do in the business, and there was a tight timeline on it as well, right? And we had to develop a system which was no downtime during development, right? So I had to rely and had to build trust on the external vendors, right? And had to, validate, ask for use cases, you ask for examples of where they've done this before. So, I think that's a really important point, in that, you don't necessarily want to be a full trailblazer. True. You want to be a fast follower, right? And in order to do that, you need to establish, has this been done before, right? Because there's lots of there's way more smarter people out there than me. So fostering a collaborative environment, but also you got to build trust. Now, the building trust takes time, because obviously if you're working with vendors, if I'm in an organization, I'm working with vendors, I'm paying them. So I have another mantra that I use in this case, and that's in order to get good service, to build trust, good service, you have to be a good customer, right? So I've been on both sides of things, right, where I've been the vendor coming in and also the customer, and you've got to take some risks, right? You've got to step forwards with some risk, but like I said, at the same time, SAP is not exactly an unknown entity. How it's delivered and what you put it on and how it's integrated with the current backend systems, that's where the big challenges lie, and what you're going to do in the future, because everything changes, right? SAP is now cloud, but you can go cloud-based. But I would say, again, a lot of it's down to building relationships. And it's the same for your career, right? As you work and you go forwards, you're building trust, you're building integrity, you're building respect. I would say you should have the same mode of operation when it comes to bringing in new technology. An example for that particular engagement, or that project, which was a 2-year project, I ruffled a lot of feathers. I ruffled a lot of feathers in the IT operations, because I was introducing all sorts of new ways of doing things, right? I was bringing in automation, and at that time I made mistakes, right? I thought this is the perfect solution. What's your problem, guys? Go, oh, you're validating standards. What? You're violating standards. Sorry, not valid. You're violating standards. Well, standards change, right? So again, it became there were lots of conversations about why it makes sense to go this way and not stay where we are. So yeah, it's a scary one, because you won't hit the nail on the head every time.
100%.
You will make mistakes and learn from them, right?
Again, this is definitely, a lot to digest, and lots of wisdom there. Thanks, Mark. And again, I think you're touching on a very, very important point here, which is the change and resistance to change. And I'm sure you've, created some enemies, some folks who didn't really like you because they like the comfort zone. They didn't want to change. They don't want to move
Yeah.
things. And I'm sure, you have some tricks and tips that you can share with us, how to deal with those situations. Again, those are mostly soft skills, and
Hmm.
this is where I definitely want everyone on this call to understand that, technical expertise is good, but the soft skills, communication skills, change management, those are absolutely,
Yeah.
critical for your success in your career to move ahead. If you want to go to roles like Mark as a, transformational digital advisor, or move ahead as a CIO or CEO, so maybe Mark, let's focus a little bit about, those soft skills. How did you uh, learn and improve and adapt and, build that muscle while you're also keeping your technical skills?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one because as you sort of move into this area, which is can be very contentious, right? Change is, it's funny, isn't it? Technology is changing all the time. Okay,
Exactly.
and people are in IT, in operations, they resist change because it impacts them, right? Um, so what I did again, what I've done in these cases is introduce to them a different way of thinking, to reframe it. Say, okay, I understand your concerns, right? Always have an empathetic perspective with them, right? Um, Document it. You know, go and meet. Not only do you meet one person, you meet their entire team, right? You do brown paper sessions, lunch and learn sessions, and you get people to talk about it and think about it, right? As soon as people start turning up, right, and you have sessions where there's good conversation going on, and then you start to understand why are there are points of resistance, and get the conversation going. As soon as that starts happening, right, the resistance actually reduces, doesn't go completely. That's one technique. Another technique is I had one guy who was so bullheaded, didn't want to know, didn't want to know, didn't want to know, didn't want to know. I said, okay, we can agree to disagree. And I said, if the outcome of this is negative, you can call me out. I'll take ownership. I will take ownership. So there's a bit of guts involved as well, right? Because nothing ever goes completely smoothly, right?
100%.
So those are techniques I've used. But I think education is key, helping people to understand that also it will benefit them. You're bringing in something that they don't know about. Hey, that's an opportunity for them to actually learn, right? This is really key. You have to get people to get on board with wanting to learn about it. And I think we're now in an era right now. If you don't want to learn, you're gone.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it should become less of a problem, right? But there's going to be the old guard. I used to consider myself the vanguard enterprise architect, whereas I was surrounded by the guardians, right? No change. These are the standards. This is thou must do this. Thou must. Hang on a minute. How are you going to move forwards if you're going to have that mental model?
Yeah.
Um, so again, I think also to de-risk things, you would do like proof of concepts for people as well, so they could get hands on the tools, right? I even spent like I think it was about one particular project where we knew there was going to be a great deal of resistance because they were only the project was really focused on speed and bringing in completely all these consultants, some of them costing $1,000 a day,
Wow.
and they had to go right. There had to be no no halting, right? And we were given the remit from the VP saying, well, you're going to upset people, but we have to feed them information when they need it, only when they need it, not before, not after, So the whole concept of educating people. So we spent, I think, around about 100,000 on training the operations teams on these new technologies, right? Which would inevitably make their lives better, through automation, repetitive tasks would be gone and so on. And you'd be able to focus your time more on delivering value to the business, right? So I didn't have the skills to start with, all right? You get scars, right? You get burnt. And I'm sure there's still people that are spitting feathers about me. But at the end of the day, if you've got enough of a quorum, what is it? If you get 51% of the vote, you're in. Well, they were wanting 100%. I'm saying, well, that's not possible. Let's agree to not to disagree on these things. And like I said, if things break, if things don't work, if the outcomes are not what we're expecting, then you can run the bus over me, right?
That's ownership.
So that it's ownership, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I was within a business, right? So as a consultant, it's a little bit easier because as always, the external consultant, the companies look to you as the advisor, as that person with all of the knowledge. I would say it's less so now, but certainly, in my experience, that's what's happened, right? Organizations automatically, when you were, for example, at Microsoft, they would expect you to have all the expertise on the Microsoft stack, right? They expect those vendors to have the expertise and advise accordingly, right? But that doesn't always work. Again, going back to the multi-cloud thing. Well, do you know how much it's going to cost to go Azure? And they've got this mental model that if we go for 2 clouds, we're going to keep them both honest price-wise. And so well, you're missing the point entirely. Because the costs are not there. The cost savings between one vendor to the other, one hyperscale to another, is minimal. What you want to focus on is capabilities, speed, and alignment to what you have in your own infrastructure as well. So, there's many arguments, but I would say one of the things I've learned is you've got to be patient, and you've got to reframe the reasons for why you're advising for a specific path or technology. And also, I think the other thing, Ahmed, I've learned is to get people involved with the decision making as early as possible, and also get them involved with, for example, building out the roadmap, what it would look like, right? And I think if you get people to feel a sense, you've used the word, you get people to feel that they have a sense of ownership around what's going to happen, they get behind it more, right? Whereas rather than it being happening to them, they're actually on the journey and they're making the changes.
100%. Thanks, Mark. So again, guys, we can speak, for the whole time. We definitely are very excited and passionate about this topic, but definitely, want to, check if you guys have specific questions to Mark. Feel free to raise your hand or unmute, ask questions. I'll keep going, ask Mark some other questions. Hopefully, sure. Okay, so we have one question here. Go ahead, Midad.
Mark, thank you for making time for us today. So I had a question, like, you mentioned you were also part of the implementation and the operational side of it. I guess I'm curious to understand your perspective or your experience when it comes to the actual execution of it, like in terms of timelines and like setting out the projects. What sort of companies do you see or what sort of organizations do you see are more successful? Are organizations who are planning a lot ahead and then delivering, or people who are more, I guess, they have some level of planning and then they adjust as they go? Which sort of, I guess, timelines do you see happen or are more realistically happen on, I guess, to satisfaction?
This is a really good question, because you're talking about 2 different modes of execution there. And I would say it depends. My experience is that it depends on the maturity of the organization. Some organizations, I worked for AstraZeneca when I was in the UK. As you can probably tell, I'm not from here, and they were very strong on planning, and this predominantly because of the nature of the business, right? They put product into man, and so therefore they were held accountable to the highest level of compliance by the FDA and so on. So depending on the business, right? So that had to be very structured, very planned, and very steady. Whereas I've also worked with organizations, for example, a fintech, right? And they've shifted, a lot of fintechs that have shifted to an agile delivery model, right? So, I'm currently looking at how best to sort of bring enterprise architecture into an agile delivery model. I've not seen it fully function yet, I'll be honest with you, but I've seen some success at that. The challenge is because enterprise architecture tends to be very structured and they want to see certain things. You as an architect have to be as flexible as the team, right? And I think, again, when I was working at this insurance company, I actually worked with the operations team and the applications team to actually really build the roadmap. And the roadmap, so it was high level, right? But within that, you'd have multiple streams of activities, right? So you'd have sprints broken down into sprints. My earbuds are about to go. But I think I really enjoy doing the sprint work because it keeps everybody accountable and things don't drift as much, right? But it takes time for that culture to actually permeate throughout the organization, unless you're a startup. So I've seen success on both sides, right? I would say there's not a silver bullet that says thou shalt use agile from now on. It always depends on the organization and their capacity to be able to do that shift. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. No, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Like, I guess, I had an hypothesis and I asked you the question to kind of see where I like is, I think I'm in the same boat in terms of selfishly, I ask you that question because that's what I do for a living. Do agile consulting, and that's what I see too. Like most organizations, in my early days, I'd probably be more rigid, but I think now I look at it from you go as far as the organization can go at the time that they can go at it, right?
Yeah.
So and have a mixed approach as new.
Yeah, I think you have to have a blended approach. Yeah. And TOGAF is an agile. If you use it properly, it can be agile, right? Because it's circular. Now, I don't know if you people on the call are familiar with the Open Groups architecture framework. It's very adaptive. You don't use everything specifically out of the box. You pick and choose what you need to use for the given requirements, right? But it is cyclic, and everything in the center of it is the business requirements. It affects each one of the stages.
We lost you, Mark. I think we lost your AirPods, maybe.
Yeah, my earbuds are gone.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. No worries.
Can you hear me okay, though?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, it's a little bit far, but it's okay.
Sorry
okay, Medad, do you have any follow-up here, or should we move on?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I probably should drop for a bit, but it was good getting that insight. Let's connect if we need to.
You guys, you can connect to me over LinkedIn. I'm quite happy to have conversations with people one-on-one as well.
Yeah. So sounds good. Okay, so Mark, let me move to another question that maybe can be interesting for some of the folks here. Again, many attendees are maybe exploring mid to senior IT roles. What advice would you give, for successfully transitioning to senior level positions, especially in a fast evolving market? What would you really think folks need to, invest their time and learning and wisdom on to transition, let's say, from a developer to mid senior level, role or something?
Yeah. Well, it always involves people, right? Look for opportunities where you're given an opportunity to lead a project or a small piece, rather than being just the developer or the person doing the work. Look for opportunities where you have to work with a team or coordinate a team. That's a key one. Also, I would say present ideas. If there are problems, don't just go say, oh, there's a problem here. Identify problems and have solutions, and not just one, maybe a couple of solutions. That shows leadership, right? For me, leadership is not just about managing people. It's about how you present information and ideas, right? And the key one is to be able to coordinate and work with folks, right? So being able to know when to let go of being on the keyboard, or should I say, be the technical lead. Know when to kind of step back from that. Yeah, always look for an opportunity to stretch yourself, right? Maybe it's a skill you don't necessarily have initially, and I don't mean a technical skill, I mean a softer skill, right? Where you're going to be engaged at a higher level than yourself, right? No, so you go outside of your maybe outside of your team area. You look for opportunities where you're engaging more with business partners, right? So I think that's really important, because then that shows initiative, right, and courage. I think it's really important to have some courage to also feel that you don't necessarily need to have all the information at hand to be able to move forwards. So also understanding that it takes a team to deliver something, and it's not just you as an individual. I think that's an epiphany. People can just stick where they are. Those are the rooted to the I don't want to change. But those people that want to move to more of a leadership type role, they're already starting to embrace that change mentality, right? So
Yeah, I remember.
opportunities. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember part of what we used to do in Microsoft, creating those IP kits and teaching our teams like to do one thing that is new and that we didn't really deliver it before, like for example agile or sprints or
yeah,
those kind of transformation, how to move to the cloud, what are the steps, what are the roadmap, what you should think first, think second and third, and build that kind of
mm,
structure around complex programs that we used to deliver. So that maybe something that folks here can take away from this call and start to think about how can I be impactful within my team, within my organization, or to show my employer that I'm ready to move to the next level, and take more ownership, or maybe take more leadership, and maybe lead more folks, even if they are my peers. They don't really report to me, because some folks feel like people need to report to me to follow me, and
yeah.
that's not
That's not the case.
yeah,
Yeah,
not the case most of the time, especially for you, Mark. Again, for your
yeah,
role, you have to make so many people follow you without being reporting to you.
yeah. I call it being a non-authoritative influencer in a way, because you're not given the sort of, like you said, the line of people reporting to you, and then everybody, you got to be able to traverse across different areas, different domains, different skills, and you got to equate to them, right? You got to be able to relate. So I think that is a key leadership skill, and that's where I don't know if you guys have ever watched Satya Nadella. He's like one of my favorite CEOs, because he brings himself back down. He brings himself back down to the common ground with everybody else, right? He's a very smart individual, but he would always listen to anybody, right? Anybody within the organization was open, ask me a question. So I think that's another trait that, you know, as an individual, as you become more focused on moving to a leadership role, is that ideas, right? And some of the greatest ideas don't necessarily come from who you think they're going to come from, right? So I think that's another part of being a leader, is being able to enable people who wouldn't necessarily speak up beforehand to do so, right? So that's the facilitator, the listener. You know, listening skills. I'm talking a lot now, but believe me, when I go into an organization on an engagement, I'm very quiet. I'm listening. I'm feeling what's going on. I'm getting an understanding of the people, you know, of the culture, you know, where the potentially the, you know, the blockers are going to be, where's the enablers are going to be, you know. So I think that's another area that everyone needs to, in any shape, in any type of role, is to listen more, right? And I mean truly listen, not think about what your response is going to be straight away after what somebody said to you. So I think that's another key area.
Yeah. So one more point, maybe Mark, again, and this is, I guess, most of us today, feel overwhelmed of the amount of technology, amount of certifications, amount of knowledge that we need to digest and absorb to stay current, So can you maybe, provide a few insights about how did you manage that overwhelmness, while, moving ahead? And again, I'm sure you were very busy. You didn't really have much time to put in learning, but you manage to keep, current and stay updated. So how do you prioritize this? How do you set the time? How do you select which areas should I really invest on?
It's great. Again, fantastic question. Well, as I'd chosen to be more of a strategic, as I moved away from strategic, I realized that, I can't focus on all the technology. If you look at, for example, you look at Azure, right? It's a massive undertaking, yeah. Because when I did the roadmap for, I've done a few roadmaps. At the time, it was 160 services available in Azure. So I'm like, okay, there's no way anyone can know all of that, right? So you've got to really set your own roadmap, I would say. That's one of the things I did. This is the area I want to go in. I'm going to stay in it, but I'm going to be flexible enough as things move along. Like agile, I resisted doing the agile Scrum Master certification because it's not going to benefit me in the long run, right? So I'm focusing on my key discipline, even though it's very broad, right? So I think that's really important to set your priorities on those things, right? So if you want to be, for example, I don't know where you are in your careers, but you're starting as a junior, you've come out of university, you've known about cloud stuff, you focus your energy on that. Don't try and consume it all. Don't try and do Azure and AWS and GCP. Just don't do that. It's just crazy. Focus your time, because if it's a technology area, you really need to be an expert in that area, right? You really do need to know it's soup to nuts, right down to the the code and stuff, maybe. But as an architect, right, you're at a higher level, so the amount of information that you're looking at is very, very broad. I use mind mapping as a tool. So, and again, depending on which client you're going into, you might need a different skills. You might need to know about a different technology stack or a different application or data stack and so on. So you would, depending on what's going on, you would focus on that. Stepping back now, because I've taken a little bit of time out, between roles, and I'm reskilling in, well, I wouldn't say reskilling, but I'm certainly focusing on how can I use AI as an architect to improve the experience for my clients. Something I couldn't do whilst I was in a role because it's all consuming, right? So I kept my TOGAF certification going because that's core to me as an architect. It's table stakes, right? But I also read stuff. I read a lot. I had the audio. When I was traveling a lot, so I used that. When I was coming out to Ottawa, I used that time to educate myself. Right. I use non-business time to educate myself, and I think everybody will have to do that. I really do, because that's the world we're in at the moment. Companies are not going to pay you to learn all the time. So it's about you. It's about your career. It's about your future. You should carve time out every week, 4 hours minimum. That's what I was doing. I'm doing more than that now. I'm like 16 hours a week at the moment. But write everything down, the technology you're in, the areas that you're in, where you feel your weaknesses are, and then start to build your own roadmap as to your own education roadmap on what you should be looking at. Now, with regards to information overload, I've not really come across, I will be honest with you, a method that allows me to completely consume less, right? But as I've gotten older, I go, okay, is it going to help me? Have a set of principles, right? Have a set of principles. Is it going to help me in my career? Is it going to help the organization I'm working for? Is it beneficial to mankind? I get a little bit philosophical, right? Because I want to work for organizations now that are actually focused on the right things for the human species, right? So again, you hear a little bit about my sort of my philosophy, but I think you need to have a set of principles by which you kind of check yourself off on, because you can get drawn in. Be aware of when information there's too much information, or you feel yourself getting overwhelmed. Disconnect from it, because you'll just get confused. I've certainly gone through that. You go down the rabbit holes, right? The other one is, do you actually need to know everything about this particular area? No, you don't. Do you know somebody who knows it? Yes, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Well, reach out and find somebody who knows about it, because I think you'll find that you'll get more if you've got people engaged in that sort of learning process about newer technologies than if you did it all yourself, right? So I think, again, we're going back to that principle about don't think you have to do everything yourself, right? Awesome. There are people out there that build a team. What can I say?
That's a great wisdom. That's a great wisdom, Mark. And again, we're running out of time, but again, I definitely, appreciate all the wisdom that you shared here. And I guess from what you said, it seems like TUGAF is an important certificate for folks who are really looking to be a digital advisor or maybe enterprise architect, to work with. But I